Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. It's no hell below us. Above us is only the sky. Imagine all the people living life in peace. Now, yesterday Johan Galtung told us what to expect when one has a vision, right? When you first talk about it, there will be silence. But today Marco El Safadi told us how small children, they don't know what it is to be rejected, so they go on and on with their message. So you go on and on with your vision, and next time you talk about it, people will laugh. But you go on and on and on and on. Remember? You talk about your vision, and all of a sudden, a politician will listen to you. And you go on talking about it, and the politicians will agree with you. I do not know when his vision started, but there is no silence and no laughing, and politicians listen to him, and even the United Nations recognizes his work. He has stated that 21st of September is the International Day of Peace. So please welcome Jeremy Gilley, the founder of Peace One Day. We're honored to have you here.
Very much, thank you. Well, listen, I mean, it's a massive honour to be here. I mean, today I was very nervous, up on the stage and meeting the Prince and having that moment with him. It's a real honour. I mean, something's being celebrated that's incredible and remarkable. There's been 200 years of peace, in this beautiful country, and that's obviously a real inspiration, and I'm sure is running through the theme of everything that you've done this week. And I think that for me, that's exciting to know that it's possible and that people don't have to fight. And that's obviously what is driving, the work that I do. And so I think I'm going to show you a little film in a moment, but I know that you've all watched some films today. That's right, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think you saw Peace One Day, The Journey, which was a piece of work that I made not so long ago. And so what I'd like to be able to do is I'm just going to tell you some stories of how it really began and what was kind of going on and what it's been like to sort of be on this journey for the last 16 years. I'll just try to be open and truthful about how it is and then allow you the opportunity to ask questions, because actually the most interesting thing that will happen tonight is when we engage together and kind of like just answer everything that needs to be answered, which I hope will be inspiring and empowering and useful for me, because I'll clearly learn something, because I'll know what you're all thinking, and hopefully I can give you something back as you go off on your journeys, no matter what it is you do, then hopefully it'll be helpful. The story is that I was an actor, as some of you might know. I was 12 years old when I started acting. I was having real trouble at school. I really genuinely didn't know what was going on in the classroom, and I found it a really frightening place. And I was very small, and I was ridiculed, and I was humiliated, and I was bullied, and I found that really strange and scary. And that was definitely what was going on. When I think back at my school life, those are the things that I think about. I think about that. And at the same time, what was going on in my home was very interesting. My parents weren't together. I was finding that tough to try to make sense of. And I think that turned me into somebody who was thinking a lot about how people are getting along. How one manifests peace, because you can manifest peace in a home as a little person. You can know that you're walking into a volatile situation and suddenly you start to change your behaviour. You start to act a particular way in order to try and make everything okay. So from a young age, whether I was in the classroom, whether I was at home, I was kind of thinking about everything that was going on around me. And of course, I got a little bit older, but I also, the academic side didn't change. I was told I was dyslexic at a very young age. I have no qualifications. I kind of pretty much, I guess, left school around the age of 12, 13 because I got into a show called Bugsy Malone in the West End of London. You know, it was kind of a way out, really. It was escaping. Suddenly there was this information in the papers that you could audition for this show, and I saw that as a way out of school, and I ended up getting the lead role in that show, and that was really the end of education. And then I kept on acting, and I joined the Royal Shakespeare Company while I was 17, and I was with the Royal Shakespeare Company for 3.5 years, and then I started to do all kinds of different television programs and films. They weren't particularly very successful. I wasn't particularly very successful as an actor, but that was the sort of the early stages. But I was involved in the arts, and I was involved in theatre, and I was learning about structure, and for the first time I was reading whatever I was in, because you had to, and in order to act you had to read the words in order to say them. So it was the beginnings of me starting to read, and I was enjoying it, but then as I was cruising towards sort of 25, I started to get more concerned about what was going on in the world, because I was getting a little bit older. I was watching the news, I was seeing the violence, I was recognising what was going on in the city, I was thinking about what was going on at home. I was just trying to make sense of why people behave the way that they do, and I was finding it difficult to make sense of it. You know, I was asking myself, is humankind fundamentally evil? You've heard me say this phrase. You know, is humankind fundamentally evil? Is the destruction of the world inevitable? Should I have children? Is that a responsible thing to do? I was asking myself these things, and that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to become a filmmaker. I'm going to try and use the camera to explore and generate content that was meaningful to me, which is what I did. And I started to make a series of films about all kinds of things, you know, homelessness, drug addiction, suicide, all kinds of quite heavy subjects that I was wanting to, you know, explore through film. I thought they were great pieces of work, you know, like important pieces of art, if you like, but nobody was buying those films. Nobody was particularly interested in seeing them. I was learning that they clearly weren't commercial. They weren't what the channels wanted to show. But that was okay. I knew I was serving an apprenticeship for something that I loved, which was utilising the camera. And it was around that time that I'd made sort of 4 or 5 films that really nobody was wanting to see, apart from me and my friends and a few festivals. And I was thinking about peace, and I was thinking, okay, well, I want to make a film about peace. I want to make a film about peace. I want to, you know, examine all of those issues, of those things that are on my mind, and I'm going to go around the world. I don't know how I'm going to do it because we didn't have any money, but I'm going to go around and I'm going to speak to older and younger and all kinds of different people and say, look, how are you making sense of this? You know, what's the one piece of advice you give me? What keeps you, inspired and empowered? I mean, just help me understand what's going on. And I thought that'd be really interesting, and I thought, well, if I document that journey, then I could show that to other people, and some other people might be thinking what I'm thinking. I mean, some of you, I'm sure, will be thinking, well, I've had some similar thoughts to what he's had, and I'm wondering how to make sense of it all. And of course, you're at one incredible event like this, and these events are what is helping us to make sense of everything, giving us a support network, being able to share openly, your fears and your dreams and your aspirations, and that's what it's really all about. And I commend and congratulate everything that's happened and all of you for doing what you've been doing, because these relationships you're building are what's going to take you through life and be the kind of bedrock and the foundation of you becoming the people you want to become. So I was concerned about all of those things, and I thought, okay, I'll make this film. And then I realised, having been involved, having been involved with Shakespeare, that I was thinking, well, where's this film that is a series of sound bites? Where is its beginning, its middle, and its end? Where's it heading? What's the journey that this film is going to take? And of course, there isn't one. A series of sound bites isn't one. And that's when I thought, well, where's the starting point for the film? And that's what made me think, well, where's the starting point for peace? And that was when I had the idea. So the idea of thinking about trying to create a day of peace was through going through a creative process around the structure of a piece of work about peace. And that's when it all started. There was no day, there was no starting point for peace, and that was it. In 1998, July 28th, I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to see if I can go on a journey to try and establish the first ever day of ceasefire and non-violence with a fixed calendar date voted by every government of the world. And I thought at that point when I had that idea, it was bound to fail. There was no way I was going to succeed, that I would document the journey for a year, but I thought if I failed, it would make an interesting statement about a world that was unwilling to unite and then come together and create this day. And so that was really my motivation. And actually those thoughts are quite interesting. The idea that the journey, the mountain that we climb, it doesn't actually matter whether we get to the top or not. Actually, the most interesting thing about it is when we do fail and when we do fall over and we then look and examine as to what happened. That's when it becomes really interesting. For me, on this 16 years, I've become fascinated by no's. I get much more excited and interested and engaged when somebody says no. And I really get excited when it goes wrong. And that's when I feel I can focus most and be in a really interesting space, the space that I love most, which is when it's really hard and I've got to really concentrate and gather my strength and think about the people that I've seen. And I think this is a really important thing for all of us to kind of get into, is that no's are just an opportunity to learn so much more about what it is you're interested in, and the failures are actually the opportunity when you draw back and pull it all together and go back at it with a much stronger case. And that stronger case is ultimately what will give you your result. So I think for me, failing is everything, and no's are fascinating. And if that's true, then of course it doesn't really matter. I'll go for anything in terms of what I've done over the last 16 years and what we're going to try and do now, because you can only do your best, and your statement and what you generate is the picture, and it's beautiful no matter what it looks like, And so anyway, that's, if you want to know what's making me tick and making me keep going, it's that thinking. It's what is just keeping me in there. And the fact that I've got the film camera always running, when it goes wrong, I'm thinking to myself, well, this is another wonderful moment. It's an interesting moment where we can be reflective and look at it and kind of learn and engage, and it's obviously full of drama. So that was the beginning. Okay, we're going to try and create this day of peace. And then in terms of because you've seen the films, in terms of we had nothing. I was at my mum's place. She gave me her back room to set up the office, and the funding of the whole process in the early days was really interesting. It was me and my mates. We had nothing. We wrote to Sony to get our camera. We wrote to Kodak to give stock for the Super 16mm cameras that we were running in those days. The dry cleaner around the corner was doing the suits, because I was saying to him, we're on this amazing journey, would you clean these suits? Because we're using them all the time. And he was. When we needed to fly anywhere, we wrote to British Airways and said, look, could you give me the flight? And they said, where are you going? I said, well, the Dalai Lama's just asked us to meet. Could you fly us to get to the Dalai Lama and film? And they were fascinated that this was happening. And that was what it was. It was a constant case of always asking everybody to help and engaging them in the process. And it kind of got us a long way. It got us a long way, doing that. And then we were playing guitars and doing nights of poetry. I mean, just anything that we could think of to kind of get through, to buy more stamps, to buy more letters, because in those days, 16 years ago when we began, I didn't own a computer until, about 6 months after I'd decided to do this thing beginning in 1999. Everything was envelopes, everything was paper, everything was being posted everywhere, and you can imagine what that was like. It was just thousands of letters, because every government was being written to, every Nobel Peace Prize winner was being written to, all the key NGOs, all the heads of faith, religions, whatever. We were writing to everybody saying, this is what we're going to try and do. Would you see us? Do you think a day of peace is a good idea? That was the journey. But what was interesting is I was always saying, look, I'm a filmmaker and I'm filming this process. And in many cases, I think because people knew we were filmmakers and we were going for something that was a good idea, they said, okay, well, yeah, come into the room and come and talk about it. And every time I went and saw somebody, I'd then quickly make a little film about them saying it was a great idea, and then I'd try and publish it and show Kofi Annan, or show Nelson Mandela, or show Perez, or Amr Musa, or I don't know, whoever it was. And I was collecting all of these statements, and it just became this kind of, snowball that everybody started to kind of go, all right, well, I'll be in the film now. And of course, after a few years of traveling the world, and doing that, I'm delighted, obviously, that the Costa Rican government and the British government, put it forward to the United Nations General Assembly, and it was unanimously adopted. But that, that was the journey, and I think it's, it's just nice to just be able to talk about that for a moment. We'll talk about it in your questions, perhaps. That, it's like, that's how it begins. It begins with nothing. It begins with your passion. It begins with your family, your mum and dad, your friends, getting around the table, working it out, finding the solutions, and just, going for it, and eventually, getting to where you need to get to. And as I said in that speech earlier, because I really do want to just get into answering your questions and talking with you, what I said in that speech earlier was about the cynic. When we created the Day of Peace and we put that out there, and I made the first film called Peace One Day, I could hear people saying, it's just a day, it's meaningless. And that was really worrying. In fact, that was much more worrying than when I began the journey, about in terms of creating the day. It's like, well, I've heard from everybody that this is a really good idea, from some of the most important people in the planet and humanitarians in area of conflict, but once it's been created, everyone was looking and going, it's meaningless, it's never going to work. And that's what led to that process, in Afghanistan. And I knew that, if we did go to the one place that everybody thought it was impossible, then it was really difficult for the cynic to be able to continue to hold that position of, it's just a day, it's meaningless, it will never work. And it had to be something as grand and as interesting as making it work in Afghanistan. And of course, as we all know, you've seen the films, it did work in Afghanistan, and that really turned the corner. And I think in terms of cynicism, I think cynicism is really, nobody should be, whenever I met a cynic, I would never judge them or think, well, what a nasty person, you're not a believer, you don't care about stuff. I think cynicism is actually all right. I mean, it's just where some people are, and for a lot of people, I completely understand as to why somebody would take such a view when some of us have had the heavy experiences that we've had. If you've had those experiences, what is it that you see that makes you believe that it can be differently if your reality is something that isn't peaceful and optimistic and constructive? And so I think that, you've got to kind of embrace everybody and not judge and not blame. And this was the other thing that really just got us going and really moved it forward, is that sense of, you can never shame, you can never blame, you can never ridicule. It's like, and that's what brings everybody to the table. That's what's made this a success, is that if somebody's saying, no, I'm not interested in this, well then that's fine. There'll be somebody else who is. And we certainly don't need to be talking about those people who aren't. Because if we talk about those people who aren't, all we do is reinforce that sense of anger or frustration that they feel. And that's why whenever I'm asked a political question about, well, what do you think about this country or that country, there's no way I'll comment. Because there are children in that country who don't need to hear that some individual thinks that their country is whatever they think it is. It's not helpful, it's not constructive. And so for Peace Day, it's a day where everybody can come to the table, everybody can join in. And if you don't want to join in, then you should feel fine about that, and that's not an issue. But there are a lot of people who do, and we need to embrace and get those people involved, in the hope that that person who doesn't might look at it and go, well, actually, that was a really interesting experience that they went through, and because I haven't been ridiculed, then I'm much more open to coming to the table the next time. The day, it doesn't matter, for me, it doesn't matter what somebody did yesterday. If they're interested in coming to the table today, then you should just embrace it, and we should talk constructively about the future and not the past. Because all the while, whilst we're talking about the past, we're just stuck into that scenario of blaming and who's right and who's wrong, and nothing's moving forward. And I know there are intense situations and fragile situations, of course I respect that. But for us, I think the reason why we're seeing massive growth in the day is it's all encompassing. You just come and do your thing and feel good about it, because if you feel good about it, you might want to do it more. So yeah, that's sort of a little bit of background about what's going on and where we are. I think that this other phase, which I touched on earlier, is what's really interesting me now. After 16 years of being on the road and doing this, what we're involved in, and all I'm thinking about every day is what you saw in that film, the 21-minute film, is the institutionalization of this day, of making it self-sustaining. As you know from that film, Mrs. Jarvis had the idea for Mother's Day in 1908. Nobody knows about Mrs. Jarvis, everybody knows about Mother's Day. That is success.
And in fact, exactly the same is going to be true of Peace Day. Germany's irrelevant, Peace One Day is irrelevant. It's all about the day. That's all that's important. That's what's going to become famous. And Peace One Day will slip into nothingness because we would have played our role. Now, I'm willing to continue to play a role, and Peace One Day can still do. If it needs to serve, then it will serve. But ultimately, this is about Peace Day. It's not about us. And I see ourselves as messengers, not the message. Everyone who's observing the day, what's going to happen in the Congo, what happened in Afghanistan, what Save the Children will do, what the Crown Prince will now do. That's the story. It's about all of you. It's about what you will now do. We are just filmmakers trying to show that there is constructive, activity going on. There is a world that's uniting. There is a world that's coming together as one on a massive scale very, very quickly. And that's really exciting. And that's what this whole thing is about. So when we use music, or when we use films, or when we work with the corporate sector, or when we do social media, or when we do education, or when we're campaigning, it's all to generate awareness of this day. Because awareness means action, and action saves lives. So the data that we're looking at now is we're analysing the numbers every year. So 280 million people aware in 2012, 470 million people aware in 2013, probably close to 1.5 billion people being aware this year, and I hope the target of 3 billion people being aware by 2016. That's between 2012 and 2013, that's a 68% growth of the awareness of that day. There is not the only thing on this planet that is growing as fast as Peace Day is probably an iPhone. So we work with McKinsey and Company. And McKinsey and Company work with the top 1,000 companies of the world, and they are saying we cannot see anything that is growing as fast as that day. Now that's not because of me, that's because of you, that's because of the organisers, and thank you very much for inviting me here and what you're all doing and all of the other organisations. It's growing fast because of everybody else, and that's a really exciting thing. To think that we could have a moment of global unity, to think we could see the youth of the world stand together as one, in the hope that what I said earlier, that shifts the level of consciousness around the fundamental issues, a world united, a true moment of intercultural cooperation on a scale humanity has never seen. That's just awesome. That is incredible. The idea that our world, separate from politics and religion, will stand together as one in the name of peace. What will that do to my little daughter's head, who's 3.5, who can know that this day, there's a day where everyone and their families are united. We're one on this earth. Beautiful. It's like, boosh. I mean, that's just like, wow. For me, it's like, that's why I'm so fascinated about being in the Democratic Republic of Congo right now. I'm with young people over there. I'll be in Rwanda on Monday, I'll be in Congo on Tuesday. We're there all the time. We're doing this fascinating work in the Great Lakes region of Africa. For young people are the same. This young girl said to me the other day, she's like, what is peace? Like for 20 years, if you're under 20, you've just known nothing but war if you're in East DRC, etc. But she said to me, what is peace? And what colour is it? Colour is it? I'm like, wow, what colour is it? What is it? And she was like really on it. And I just think, wow, and what excites me is that there's going to be a day on the 21st September that may well unify that region or that area or her little town. And she'll know what peace is. She'll know that the people of her country are coming together. She'll see football matches. She'll see people dancing. She'll listen to Akon free on the radio stations of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And she'll know what peace looks like. And that's like why a mountain climber climbs a mountain again. Because they climb the mountain and they see the view. And the view is beautiful. And you walk back down, and you go back up again. And the interesting thing is the journey, is falling down, is the next grip, concentrating on every single grip, nothing more, which is what it's all about. But that view, and that's what I talk about, that's what that day is for me. That day is the view. It's a view of peace, and it's beautiful. And that is what many, many people need to see and feel, and we as much as anybody else. And we as much as anybody else, because this is a day of ceasefire and non-violence. There's a lot of guns fired today, but there's an awful lot more fists hitting people. And the real deaths that are going to happen today are not with guns, they're in a domestic situation. And that's why it's a day of non-violence. So ceasefire, yeah, that's important. But actually, this is where this is where it's at. This is not like, let's look over there in X number of countries that we could mention right now about, well, they really need to stop, or they've got to sort their problem out over there. No, they haven't. I've got to sort it out in the UK. We've got to sort it out in, you know, whatever continent you look at, whatever country you look at. And that's really why each and every one of us has to say, right, I want peace. We need to manifest peace, and I am the answer to peace happening in this world. If I don't engage, why should I expect governments to? Or indeed anybody else, if I'm not willing to do it myself? And that's what the day represents, is that sense of we are, you know, we're all in this together. And if we act together as one, then something massive and wonderful is going to occur. And if we can get it right for one day, we can get it right for more. And you know, that's what it's about, the institutionalization of this day to make it self-sustaining, exactly like Mother's Day. And the other little fact I'm going to mention, because that's half an hour, boom, gone, and I got to stop talking. The other thing that I'll mention is the McKinsey number. What's fascinating about it is when you drive down the road, you see a billboard on the wall, and you pass it, and it's selling a drink or it's selling a car, whatever it might be. But there's a value to that poster. Somebody's put a value on you putting your product on there because they know a certain amount of people are going to pass it, and as a consequence of that, certain people are going to make a decision to take that product over another. You know, and so, you know, this is a very interesting thing, because when you start talking about peace, what I went to McKinsey's and said to them is, like, there's got to be a methodology of measurement around what does it mean that 1 billion people are aware of this day. There must be some decrease of violence. There's got to be behavioural change. When you have that many people involved in peace, there's going to be behavioural change. So on Mother's Day, I go to my mum and I give her flowers and I'm extra sweet and everything's cool. I don't know it, but I've changed my behaviour around Mother's Day. I've changed my behaviour. So the same is true of a day of peace. And the numbers that McKinsey were coming out of, they were saying 2% of the overall number is the number of people that would have been less violent as a consequence of being involved in peaceful activity. So that's really something else. So when I was with Ban Ki-moon a couple of months ago, I was saying to him, listen, this is the day when more people are thinking about peace than any other day in the world. And this is probably, and we'll prove it, the day where there is the greatest decrease of violence on this planet as a consequence of so many people being involved in peaceful activity. So your activity is a lifesaver. For every 100 people you touch, 2 of those people potentially are going to really change their behaviour around being more peaceful. That's really interesting, because it means that from 2012, sort of 5 million people not involved in violence, 16 million, I mean, just, these are massive numbers, millions of people not involved in violence, and it's blowing us away, and it's driving us to work so incredibly hard every single day to touch as many people as we possibly can to become involved in this day. And yeah, it's amazing, and it's really interesting, and it's really wonderful to be here. So let's ask some questions. Who has a question? I'll have a drink of water. Somebody's got a question, yes. Hang on, let's get a microphone so your friends can hear you.
Why September 21st?
Why September 21st? Well, the 21st of September, you know, the 21st of September is 21 is my granddad's favourite number. And my granddad was a Japanese prisoner of war. There were 700 men that left in his battalion. And 23 got on a boat to come home. 23 men got on a boat to come home to see their families, and 2 of them died on the boat on the way. 21 saw their families again. So for him, the number 21 was really an important number, obviously, for my granddad, because he just knew that 21 people made it back, and 21, it was significant for him. He saw the bomb go off at Nagasaki. It poisoned his blood, and he died when I was 11 as a consequence of that nuclear explosion. So he does not know that the 21st September, obviously, is a World Day of Peace, you know, because it was his favourite number. So very sweet. Well, I'm sure he probably does know. But that's why, 21. Good number, 21. Oh, okay. Yes.
I was wondering
what can we do with ourselves in this room? What can we do to help you do what you do?
Okay, well that's a great question, and that's in many ways the most important question, really. I mean, I think that okay, so what is it that we need to do? I mean, we need to observe the 21st of September, and it doesn't matter how you observe the 21st of September, the fact that you are observing it is everything, and you can tell us at peaceoneday.org, you can sign up to peaceoneday.org, you can sign up to the Facebook, you can follow on the Twitter. All of these numbers are registered, and we see, I don't know, probably 800-900 sign-ups every single day on Facebook, which will just escalate, to a massive number over the next 9 years. We just see it every day, it just increases. So joining the Facebook and following Twitter at Jeremy Gilley, these are all great things because the numbers are registered and those numbers are looked at by McKinsey. But the important thing is about what that's one thing to sort of show Peace One Day growth. But the important thing is what you're going to do. And the 21st of September is going to be a Sunday, as many of you will already know. There's a good chance that you'll be with your family, or have a chance to be with your family. And I think that's probably the most important thing to do, actually, is to bring our mums and dads together. Some of them might not be together. Maybe a chance that you can bring them together, maybe not, and that's okay. But something that that includes everybody. Something that is about saying, okay, well, we'll watch a film, or we're gonna read some stuff together, or we're gonna listen to some music together, or we're gonna invite our other family and friends together, and we're gonna talk about peace, and we're gonna share some food. And we know that the Grace Peace deals, or big conversations happen over a cup of tea or something to eat. I mean, that's historic. So I think there's something about you and your family. There's something that could go beyond that, which is, okay, well, I've got a network of friends, so we're going to organise an event on that day at the local park, and we're going to let people know, and we're going to have, we're going to join in the One Day One Dance campaign. There'll be people dancing in well over 100 countries on the day. There'll be people doing the One Day One Goal campaign, which is a football campaign. There'll be football matches in every country of the world this year. Or you could do the Set for Peace campaign, which is all the DJ community. Paul Van Dyke playing for us last year at the Peace Day concert, and other big DJs, Fatboy Slim and others, playing music on that night, and including. You might be a volunteer for an NGO. Make sure the NGO knows. Could that NGO bring its community together? You might go to church on that day, or go to a place of worship on that day. Fantastic. We know that the Pope made the statement on the 21st of September last year, asking the community to pray for peace on this day. Great thing he did. So I think it's, these are all the things that you can do. It's endless. You might be a filmmaker, you might be a painter, you might be a poet. Whatever it is you love doing, do it on that day, and tell us that you're doing it on that day, and tell as many people as you can to do it on that day. And you might know people in other countries, and what a wonderful thing for you as an individual to say, well, look, I know people in 30 countries. I mean, if we put our hands up now and said how many people know somebody in another country, I guarantee you will know people in well over 100 countries in this room. Well over 100 countries from this room. It's amazing. I do it all the time, and we don't have time because I want to get into some more questions. But it's kind of, if you want more information, go to peaceoneday.org. There's tons of information on there. But I think it's just observing it. It could be that you say, okay, well, 2014 is very close. I've only got 6 weeks. I'm going to keep it small this year. I'm going to keep it real. I'm going to manage my expectations. But in 2015, I'm going to make sure that the schools in my area know about the free education materials. I'm going to make sure the university knows. I'm going to, it just, it's really creative. It's an opportunity for you to really, go for it. But I would think long term. I mean, we're thinking long term. We're planned and mapped out to 2016. We know exactly what we're going to do. And I think that you as individuals can do that. You might already be in business and working for somebody, get that business involved in it, make sure that they're telling their consumers and they're telling their workforce. And as a company, they're taking a position on peace and sustainability by observing the only day of peace the world has. Yes. Oh, that's
I would like to apologize before I ask for the negativity, but I come from a very negative place, and I would really like to hear what you have to say about this. My question is that, peace for one day, or a ceasefire for one day, or maybe for a month, or maybe for a couple of years, can sometimes mask the real conflict behind it. And I come from Israel and Palestine, and the conflict there is, we tend to be very afraid and very worried about ceasefires. They actually scare us more and more, because we know that the ceasefires actually just keeping the status quo that is very bad for a lot of people. So we wait for some kind, I don't know, a crisis or a solution, whatever you want to call it, for something to change. So my question is actually is that don't you think that a peaceful one day can mask the real problems and distract us from actually dealing with them and finding a more radical and more principled solution?
Well, I mean, that's I mean, I know Israel and Palestine very well, and spent a lot of time, in Gaza and the West Bank and Israel, and beautiful places and incredible people, and and so I've thought long and hard about your question and knowing your people. And so for me personally, I think that okay, so let's imagine now there are 365 days of war. The idea of saying, well, I'm not interested in it stopping ever, and I'm going to allow that to continue because I think if we do stop, I'm just masking something. It's not something I'm thinking about. It's not something I'm going to go for. And I understand the reason why you've asked that question, and in some cases it may well be masking. But I think on the whole, there is a lot of opportunity and a lot of constructive dialogue and a lot of inspired young people who have now been given a starting point for their actions for a more peaceful world. So I think you need to look at the big number rather than individual cases. And I think that you need to, I need to think, not you, I need to think about the real violence that's also happening today, or a large portion of the violence that's happening today, which is greater than the violence with an AK-47, and that is with the fist. That is in a domestic situation. The real war that humanity faces is domestic. It's where the real deaths, very, very sadly, are happening around a lot of women and a lot of children. And I think that for the young people of the world, we need to put education materials into the schools. We need to give them tools to be able to resolve their conflicts in their homes, their communities, and in their own schools. Not just conversations about peace or just watching a movie about peace, but proper tools, proper views of how things can be different. We must inspire and empower and engage and never give up on the opportunity of manifesting peace, if only for a day. There are many, many mountains you can only climb one at a time. And I think that we need to climb the mountain of the 21st of September and unify ourselves like never seen before, separate from politics and religion. And I think out of that comes a new generation of potential peacemakers who have a different set of beliefs based on experiences that are different to those who are fighting today. Whether those people who are fighting today are wrong, one person's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist, and vice versa. The people that I've met all over the world, wherever I've met them, from whatever side, have been fighting for their freedom. Wherever I've met, if they're justified, they feel in what it is they're doing. So that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about the youth, and how do we engage them, and how do we show them something that's different. So I think that your point is very valid. I think there's other organisations and other individuals like the United Nations and other key NGOs who are dealing with these crucial topics that you're bringing up, who are funded, to create solutions to these deep-seated situations that you are talking about. Peace One Day is talking about something very simple, because it had to be simple in order for me to get my head around it, and that is, there's a day, it's a day of peace, it's a day for us to come together. It's the day for, even if it was just the youth coming together, or even if it was just the faiths coming together, or even if it was just the day where the NGOs will work together, it would be enough for me. It would be enough for me, and I think that this is not the panacea to the world's problems. It would be completely unrealistic to think that it was, but it is something. It is something that we get excited about. It is a starting point for all of you to go, well, I've learned something today, and I've got a good set of friends from this today, and in 5 weeks' time, there's a day when millions of young people will be doing something, and I'm going to join them. And I'm going to grow that and build that. That's what I think we need to do.
Mucho gusto de conocerlo, disculpen, no hablo inglés. pero me doy la de acá. Pareciera una pregunta obvia, pero por el trabajo que usted ha realizado y realiza, para usted, ¿cuál es la definición de paz?
It's very nice to meet you, and we wondered if you spoke Spanish, but I'll translate. And he said that it sounds like a very obvious question, but I want to know from you what your definition of peace is.
Yeah, peace for me, peace for me is not being frightened. For me, it's not being frightened. You know? But everyone's definition of peace will be very different. But I've been frightened. I know that I've been frightened, and not being like that is peaceful for me. Thank you for your question. Thank you for your question. I wish I did speak Spanish. I don't. Okay, who else has a question? Yeah, everyone.
Hi. I was just wondering, you talked about the UN Assembly agreeing upon this unanimously. I want to know, are these just nice words coming from politicians, or are these nations actually committed? Because I do not know about a lot of nations within the UN that do not actually have an army that's very active throughout the year. Are these nations actually committed to a peace one day?
Well, I mean, are they nice words? I think they probably are quite nice words, and you'd probably think the same. I mean, do I think that governments could do more around this day that they all unanimously adopted? Definitely, 100%. And there are some countries that are doing more than others. But and I think that it's a kind of a lead by example. You know what I mean? It's like why people climb mountains. Somebody tells you the view's incredible, and then when enough people tell you, you think, well, I better climb that mountain. I've got to see it. So I think that there's a process of making something self-sustaining and institutionalizing something. It will only happen if there is a solid foundation, which is based on really objective criteria, which is stating the real numbers and the real result around what is really going on. And that's why I got McKinsey's involved a couple of years ago to say, well, it's fine for me to tell you that it's great and it works, but it's just me telling you. We need to get somebody outside of that to really look at the data and examine the data and put their name to that data to say, this is the day when most people think about peace, and this is the day where there is the greatest decrease of violence. And we recognise that because there are thousands of schools, and the school writes in and says, on this day there was no bullying, there was no detention, there was no referrals, there was no vandalism. We know that that is a direct decrease of violence. And for some of you who have been bullied at school, and there'll be people who have been bullied at school, if there was a day when you weren't bullied, and that might be the day that you did something terrible, then it's the best day of your life. So you sort of got to build the case. The foundation has to be solid as a rock. That's why when we created the day, we didn't stop filming and go home. We created the day, and at that point, we then went to Afghanistan to prove, and that bit of foundation then was institutionalization. Do you see what I'm saying? It's a process, it's a journey, and it does take time, a lot of time. But I think the time is worth it, and the results are worth it. So do I think governments could do more? Yes, a lot more. And do I think there's a but I think that that is a process, and I think that we mustn't shame. Well, I won't, as you know, because I've already stated it. Shame or blame the countries that I think actually I wouldn't mind telling you what I think, but I can't because it's got to remain impartial and apolitical because that's just not what it's about. Because that's just not going to go anywhere and do anything for kind of moving it forward. So I was with Brahimi the other day, Ambassador Brahimi, who you all know, who's probably one of the leading figures in conflict resolution on the planet. Well, one of the key figures, right? Working very hard in Syria, as we all know. Ambassador Brahimi, tough stuff, but a very wise man. And I sat down with him on film recently, and I said, when is this going to work? When is this ceasefire going to work? When are the government's going to get behind it? What should I be doing? Am I wasting my money? Am I talking to the wrong people, to make this day a success? He said, the only people that you've got to talk to are the people. What's going to waste your time, Jeremy, is knocking on the doors of government. That's what he said. And he's a man who's one of the most incredible men there is. I mean, there's many incredible men and women who are dealing with these issues. Is one of them. But I found it fascinating, and that's why, you know, the most important meeting I'll have for sure, you know, is the one that's happening right now, because we are the people, and if we want this to work, it's because we will make it work. And we have the power through social media and technology and mobile phones to really impact in a massive way very quickly. And that's very exciting, of course, in some cases. It can be used destructively, but there are a lot of cases when the technology around us can be used very positively. And in this particular example, it can be. So I think it is a case of, you know, us all coming together as one. And I kind of dream about that idea. I sort of think, wow, when will it happen? Will it happen? Oh, we'll keep working, we're seeing the numbers increasing. But the concept, the idea that every young person could be out on the streets, you know, letting their governments know that the Day of Peace is the most important day to them, and you're our government, so please observe it too. If that happens, they're not going to not observe it. The fastest way of getting the governments of the world involved in this process is if we, the peoples, get involved ourselves. And that's the point that Rahimi was making. Yes.
How do you believe nations like the United States, who rely really heavily on employment through the military-industrial complex and armed forces services, can make strides towards peace while maintaining employment for a lot of people?
Yeah, I think that there is, I think there's a lot of employment in peace. I mean, actually, there's a lot more money in peace than there is in arms. And those are just facts, not because I know that to be true, they just are true. And even academics of this world, you can read their literature. You know, look at the work of Steve Gilley and the Peace Index that he's coming out with, and all of the data and analysis and hard work that they do. You know, peace is immensely profitable, like massively profitable, much more profitable than war. And that's a great thing because, you know, even if you think that the corporates, you know, even if you think that their desire to go into emerging markets, you know, is one to make more money, well, okay. If, as a byproduct of that money-making exercise, there is stability and job creation, you know, and communications and trade links and infrastructure put in, like, great. Why do I think that there's a chance for humanity? Well, if it was greed that got us in this situation in the first place in relation to destruction and war, if a similar greed is utilised to make more money but it generates peace, then I think there's hope. It's really interesting. It's really actually very interesting. I don't know if I've explained myself very well, but do we need to fundamentally change how we are and who we are and what we are? I'm not sure, because the signs that I'm seeing is that there is the corporate sector's moves to create this stability, to increasing growth, is having a real peaceful impact in some cases. And so I don't think anybody should feel threatened. I mean, we've got a t-shirt with the Navy on, I don't know, it might be a brand. I don't know, but Navy, you know, but if it's not, if it means the Navy, I don't think anybody in the Navy should feel threatened as a consequence of more peace. In fact, I think if you speak to anybody who's in the Navy and what's getting them out of bed every morning to do the work that they do, they'll say, because I want peace. And that's good news. I've never met a soldier who said, well, I'm in it because I'm just up for firing this trigger at someone. I mean, I don't know, it might be someone like that, but on the whole, I haven't, you know. Okay, who's next?
I have a very weird topic during the dinner after all these dignity exercises that I find that with time, I'm 24, so I'm a bit older than most in this room, and with the time it becomes harder not to be simple. How do you fight that? How do you fight in your daily life not to become cynical and not to give up on this wonderful project?
That's a good question. Well, actually, I mean, listen. I mean, I think that I'm not getting cynical. I think, you know, I understand the question. I think the answer has got to be that, you know, I'm totally believing in what's going on. I'm really that question that the gentleman just asked there about the art is really this area and this part of that question of which I'm getting my head around and trying to learn what I'm saying and what I'm thinking is fascinating as to, you know, why there is hope for humanity. Do you know what I mean? Is there real hope for us?
to do things real differently, and it really lies in this area for me, and I'm fascinated by that. But I have hope, I think, and I'm not becoming cynical as a consequence of the results that I'm seeing. You know, it's like, we're climbing and we're getting to the top, we're falling down and we're getting a lot of no's, but we're getting up and we're climbing, we see the view and it's really, I'm like, wow. And then I'm like getting up the next day, I'm like, come on, let's go for it, you know what I mean? And I think so I'm seeing results. And I think that, it's just a bunch of people here that, I'm sure everyone here, if you gave them a choice of a peace and war, like everyone 100% like peace, 100%. Even if it was a secret ballot that nobody really, what's your choice? What do you want in the world, peace or war? It's just like 100% it's going to be peace. And I think it's really exciting. It's something that everybody wants. And even if they only want it for their family and their little daughters and their little sons, it's enough. Because if we're creating peace in our families and we're improving the quality of our lives, which is why we have the theme, who will you make peace with on the 21st of September? If we can improve the quality of our lives within our families, we change the dynamic of community. And if we change the dynamic of community, we can change the dynamic of our countries. And that's why each and every one of us has to be involved in the process. And even if we don't become peacemakers, many of us will become lawyers, doctors, academics, teachers, heads of corporations, working within corporations, and all of those sectors have a massive role to play in exactly what we're talking about. This whole phrase, Ray Anderson in my films, doing well by doing good, the kind of paradigm shift that the corporate sector is going through. Paul Polman running Unilever, one of the largest companies in the world. Look at what Paul Polman is saying, the CEO of one of the biggest employers in the world. He's totally talking about peace and sustainability. And every move the org makes has got that as its agenda. Even if 100% of the time it might not be perfect, it's driving everything. It's very interesting. 15 years ago, trying to get like $5 out of somebody from, it's just different now. It's a different landscape. And I think it's positive. I genuinely, over the 16 years, when I look at everything that's going on and all the relationships that I deal with, I feel like it's moving in the right direction. I do not feel after 16 years that this is a dead end. And Jay, go look after your little 3.5-year-old girl. You've done enough. Make some money. Make sure she can go to school. It just doesn't feel like that at all. Genuinely, in my heart, I feel like we can change things big time. And you actually, obviously, as you know from this week, are the keys to that. We have to believe that it will and can be different, and we must engage. Cool, blimey.
Specialty called brown cheese, originally made from goat milk, but I think this is from a cow. So enjoy. Thank you very much. Now the program for today is almost